Hey guys, Deadslayer Magic here, and it's time for another overlooked but awesome card. Now you guys know that I'm no fan of alternate win conditions, and honestly neither is anybody else in the game. There really are only two classifications of alternate win conditions. Completely dickish ones that people hate, and the deck built around it is just unfair garbage. And then there's ones so comically unlikely to happen that if you built the deck, you're just kinda having fun, and it might win 10% of the time. Now, I would consider Infect, or I should say specifically Poison counters, to be the most annoying alternate win condition ever made, but the Get Out 10 Guild Gates and Win deck was pretty annoying too. That was just counterspell removal, bounce, board wipe, life gain, and then Get Out 10 Guild Gates. So, unless you had a cannot be countered or hexproof creature, which honestly would still get killed by a board wipe, so unless you had, I don't even know, land destruction, you would lose to that deck. Now that one would take bare minimum 10 rounds to win, but it would usually take exactly 10 rounds to win. So some of the super fast damage decks would actually beat it, but other than that, it was a solid deck. I'm surprised more people didn't play it. With nothing but control and basically zero creatures in the deck, there was a pretty good chance you could fend off your enemy for 10 turns. So that's one of the more hated alternate win conditions, but there are just silly cards like, of course, Felidar Sovereign, get to 40 life and win the game. That's pretty hard to do in the current standard. If we had Riot Control and Wall of Essence, that would be enough to push it over the edge, though, that's for sure, especially with Idly legal. One example of a way less serious win condition is Barren Glory. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control no permanents other than Barren Glory, that includes lands, and have no cards in hand, you win the game. Oh, so that's fine. All you have to do is, wipe the board of all non-enchantments and then use Armageddon, I guess? This card is stupid, but it's one of the ones where if you actually were able to do it, like if you just use non-stop exile spells and then Armageddon, I guess, I don't know, and you pull it off, good for you, but it's not like a dickish alternate win condition where the enemy can't even stop you. So that's one of the, less serious ones where maybe somebody could pull it off, but there have been some really dumb ones lately. Well, this one's legal right now. Hedron Alignment. Nobody built a Hedron Alignment deck. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may reveal your hand. If you do, you win the game if you own a card named Hedron Alignment in exile, in your hand, in your graveyard, and on the battlefield. Now remember, you're only allowed to have 4 of these in the deck. Until recently, I think there was only 1 legal fetch card too. Maybe 2, and they were both black, I think. A contingency plan will get you there a little bit, but it's just so stupidly hard to get one of these in every single location. Nobody even bothered to build this deck. I'm sure there's a deck list out there somewhere that takes its best shot at it, but you look at this card and you think, why bother? So that's a little walk through history on the different power levels and the different design styles of alternate win condition cards. But there's one card that not a lot of people have heard of. I mean, it's so legendary that some people are like, oh yeah, that dumb card. It was printed in 9th edition, but then it was brought back in M13. Oh, and of course, who can forget the Odyssey edition of it too? I'm of course talking about the legend itself, Battle of Wits. Now, there are 3 different artworks for this, so they loved it so much they decided to redraw it 3 times. In fact, the older 2 have a different flavor text. They state, and I love this by the way, the wizard who reads 1,000 books is powerful, the wizard who memorizes 1,000 books is insane. And by the way, you're insane if you build this deck, because the card states, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 200 or more cards in your library, you win the game. You know what? I'm going to throw up my favorite artwork version of it. There we go. That's more appropriate for how stupid this card is. So if you haven't put 2 and 2 together yet, this would go in approximately a 220 to 230 card deck, maybe 240-ish. I've heard different numbers. I have seen it, and if you sleeve those cards, it is tall. It is a lot taller than you think. In fact, imagine your 60 card deck sleeved up, and then multiply by about 4. Believe it or not, somebody did bring this to a modern tournament lately at my local gaming store. I didn't quite agree with the way he built it. I'd go for more single-purpose stuff. His was more like, I'm gonna win other ways. Battle of Wits is just in there, and that's why it's so many cards, but there's other win conditions, and I think he even threw a Stormtide Leviathan in there, because why the hell not? There was a bunch of free casting and just mana ramp and fetch and other colors, and it was just a giant deck that happened to have Battle of Wits in it. I would go with every single fetch card ever printed in all of Modern, every single scry card ever printed, every single draw card ever printed, mixed with every single life gain, stall, 1/1 death toucher, a wall, a creature with reach. I mean, we are going full blown turtle stall. Then I get to Battle of Wits, and I think I would have to have like a Dispel and like a Turn Aside. I say that because somebody could easily get rid of this from the field. So you play your second main phase, you have to wait until the beginning of your next upkeep, so they get to take their entire turn. You better be able to protect this sucker, or you're going to have to go find a second Battle of Wits. And now, they could just counter it when you cast it, except this is Modern, and nobody uses counter spells in Modern. And no, I don't consider Remand to be a counterspell, because it doesn't counter a spell. So this card can backfire spectacularly, but it is just painfully hilarious when you actually win a game with it, which I believe the guy who built this deck did win a couple games. I think he actually won one against me, but I won the other two. Now, as usual, I have to read the card rulings, because when the card is this weird, it's going to have some funny rulings. The first one is just kind of blah. It says, Battle of Wits has an intervening if clause. That means if you don't have 200 or more cards in your library at the beginning of your upkeep, the ability won't trigger. If the ability does trigger, but you have fewer than 200 cards in your library when the ability resolves, the ability will do nothing. So that's just like, can it be targeted with like Squelch or Trickbind or something like that? Well, that, or obviously anything that says when your opponent uses a triggered ability or whatever. The second one is pretty funny. It says, in tournaments, you must be able to shuffle your entire deck within a reasonable amount of time. I don't know why that was a ruling. That's already a rule. I heard a rumor that it's 5 minutes. You have like 5 minutes to sit down, get your crap out, get your deck out, shuffle it, and be ready to play. I don't know if that's like just a soft guideline or if that's an actual hard rule, though. When I saw somebody play this in real life, he had to shuffle it in sections, and I didn't really have a problem with that, because it is just about impossible to take sleeved cards, 120 on each side, and shuffle them. It's just too darn hard. They just tend to fall over. I would love to see somebody lose a tournament game because they failed to properly shuffle their deck in a reasonable amount of time, though. That would be funny. So if you own way the hell too many cards and you want to build this deck, good for you. You might also want to seek psychological help. But hey, nobody can really complain too much about Battle of Wits decks because they are not serious alternate win condition decks. They're just completely silly. At some point in the future, I might actually build one. If you want me to delve deeper into the world of screwy alternate win condition cards, let me know down below because there are some messed up ones. So have fun at FNM, and I'll see you guys next video.